So this demo is going to talk about how to animate your Photoshop montage in After Effects. First thing you want to do is, if you haven't already, open up After Effects, create a new project, and then what you're going to do is locate your montage, so wherever you saved it to. And so let's see, I believe this is it. So I'm going to take it, I'm going to drag it actually into my project folder here. So just kind of having both windows open, go ahead and drop it in. And then for this thing right here, it's going to ask you import what kind. You want to change it to composition, retain layer sizes. Okay. That's going to bring in your document, and you're going to see it over here. You have this folder that kind of contains all the Photoshop files. We're not going to access that. What we're going to access is this composition that it made for you. So I'm going to double click, and you should see this thing already exactly how we want it. All right, so it's ready to go. It looks good. All my layers are here in order, and next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually get this thing kind of in place in terms of depth. So first thing we want to do here is make sure that if you don't have this little thing turn on blue, your expander collapse layer switches, you want that on, and then I'm going to turn on 3D for every layer by checking those boxes with the cube. And so now every layer is 3D. All right. One thing just to note, because this is Creative Cloud, all these programs, this one, Photoshop, Illustrator, all work together. So if you make a change in the Photoshop document, it'll change it in here as well. If you erase something or change a color, it should update it. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to change right here in the middle my one view to two views horizontal. All right, and what you're seeing, let's see, on the left side here is the top view of my document. Okay, what we're going to do here is we're going to move these layers, because actually that background city layer we want to be further back. We're going to put a camera over here. We want that city background to be up here. So I'm going to go down to my layers, click on it. You're going to see this little blue arrow. By the way, you can zoom in, zoom out. Period will zoom in. Comma will zoom out on whatever cell you're clicked on. All right, I'm going to take that background layer and I'm just going to move it back. You can see it got smaller back there. That's okay. Don't worry about that yet. Take my blimp, and I want to create some depth between all these layers. There's my building. Okay, and you can kind of see how this is playing out. It's changing over here, and we'll reset that, but over here, we want that depth. We need that depth. Okay, the next thing I would do is I would go to my background, and I'm just going to try to get this thing to be a little bit larger again, so it fills my background space. Okay. Click off here, get my building, move it into position here. I'm not changing the depth there. The only thing I'm changing is just kind of its positioning. Just having some trouble grabbing the right stuff there. Okay. And there's my water tower. Maybe I'll make that a little bit bigger. And it looks like everything else is kind of okay, so I'm not really going to mess with the other things. Maybe the blimp. Where is it? There we go. Move that up. Okay. So now everything's set, and it looks pretty good. At least how I want it to look, pretty much. One thing you say, I have gaps here, that's because I cut these out. I could have done copies. That might have been a better idea. So that might be something you want to consider when you make your own montage. I'm going to go ahead and save this just right now. All right, and next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a camera. So I'm going to go up to Layer, New, and Camera. Hit OK. I'm going to change anything. You're going to see down here, there is my camera. Okay. If I go and I'm going to use my hand just to slide around here a little bit. If I go and I click on that blue arrow, that's my Z. Watch my active camera over here. And I can see I'm zooming in, zooming out. Okay, that can be keyframed. So if I open up my camera here and I go to transform, I can keyframe that. I can turn on all these positions. So I can say, all right, at 0, I want to be here. All right, I move it, 2 seconds in. I want the camera to have panned in. Okay, to zoom in there. All right, looks good, right? Okay, maybe by 5 seconds, I want it to have pulled back a little bit and maybe moved to the side. Okay, so you can physically move the camera over here. That's one way to do it. Another option is you can actually use the sliders, X, Y, Z. So Z is going to move panning in and out. The other option you have, and now we have all these keyframes turned on, is my unified camera up here. So if I click and hold, unified camera kind of does everything, except for really, I think, Z. And then these are just specific movements. So with, say, track Z, I could go out here and actually click and either zoom in and zoom out. So it's actually, and that's recording that keyframe. Something you could potentially do there. You also have unified camera, which what that's going to do, I'm going to start at 0 for this one, kind of back to that keyframe. I'm saying at this point, I want my camera to kind of be pointing this direction. And then by the time it gets in here, and I'm kind of marking my playhead at a keyframe I've already created, maybe I want it to turn a little bit more that direction, okay? So now, let's hit play. This is going to render, so it might be a little bit slow, but you can see that camera movement. So what I would recommend doing is turning on all those and just kind of leaving them. That way any changes, if you don't like a keyframe, you can delete it. And guess what? I'm just going to shorten my work area here. I can drag over these keyframes, at least the ones that they have changes on, and say, all right, easy ease, make it a little bit smoother. Okay, and that's going to have to re-render, but that looks a lot better. Taking a little bit of time to render out. All right, next thing, okay? This gets really cool. So I'm going to close up transform. I'm going to go to camera options. We're going to talk about, you could use zoom, but I'm not going to talk about that right now. I'm going to talk about depth of field, focus distance, and aperture. First off, look at focus distance. Make sure that number is big. Okay, if it's at 0, watch what happens. Okay, nothing happened because my camera was close up there. But if my camera was too far back, I wouldn't see anything. Okay, so 2000 is what I want. Right? And actually, maybe if depth of field gets turned on and that's 0, that's what's gonna happen. So I'm actually gonna turn on depth of field. Nothing changed. Watch now. Let's see. Hopefully that will work. Boom. I don't see anything. Right? Okay. Go back up to 2000. Make sure it's a bigger number. It doesn't have to be 2000. Make sure you can see your image. Right? So depth of field is gonna make it look like there's more distance. So I'm turning that on. Focus distance. We're gonna keyframe, but right now I'm just gonna leave it kind of as is. And then aperture. Aperture is the opening on a camera that controls lighting. So if I leave this really low, there's not a lot of light pouring into it. It can organize it. Everything's in focus. I don't want that to happen. So what I'm going to do is slide that number way up. Okay. And then what's going on, you can see everything's blurry. Okay. Well, if you look at your camera right now, since we turned on depth of field, there's this extra little line. And that line right there, I'm going to switch to my arrow tool. That line right there is saying what to be in focus. And that is my focus distance. So I'm going to turn on keyframing for focus distance after I have all this kind of set. And I'm going to say, all right, focus distance at that point, where's it going to be? It's going to be on the water tower. Okay, so it's kind of connecting with the water tower image. That's the water tower, that's the building, so on and so forth. And you kind of assume what some of those are. I know that's the blimp, it's really small. All right, so then I'm saying, okay, at that point, look, be there. At this point, you can see it. My camera's moving, so is my focal point. All right, and then let's see. Okay, at this point, what do I want to be in focus? I want maybe one of those two things, so maybe I'll pull this back a little bit. And then at this point, what do I want to be in focus? The background, which it already is because I already keyframed this stuff. So you could go either direction. You don't have to do it this particular way. Maybe I'll make sure that that background's the only thing in focus, okay? And then you can see over here, so I'm just going to switch back to one view, that now stuff is blurred in the foreground. The background is more in focus. That's just not a great quality image, but it is actually in focus. And you can keyframe any of that stuff. So let's go ahead and hit play. Let's see what that looks like. It's going to take a minute to render because it's got a lot of stuff to deal with. You could always bump up that aperture more. So maybe I will, just to kind of show you. Because like stuff's really going to get crazy blurry then, if it's not in the depth of field. So you can see that green is rendering it out. Okay, so I'm going to let that go. But in the end, what you have is a camera movement on this 3D camera, moving through this three-dimensional space, and you're using things that are blurred and out of focus to create that effect even more. Okay, I'm gonna stop it there. I think that's the end of mine. All right, the next thing I'm gonna do is keyframe movement on my other stuff. So I'm gonna close. Camera's done. All right, now I'm gonna open up maybe Godzilla. Okay, and I'm gonna say, all right, at this point, Godzilla, hit P. All right, turn on some keyframing. There, I want Godzilla to be out of frame. Okay, maybe down. I don't know if he's getting cut off there or not. And then we'll say by the time he gets to this point, I want him to have been on screen. And like you could go back and like if I want to make this more complex, I could be like, all right, he's gonna walk, so he's gonna maybe be going up and down. And then imagine if I did sound effects in here too. That would even make it cooler. is. He appears. Okay. Same thing with the blimp. Click on the blimp. Position. Okay, at this point, where do I want it? Turn it on. I want it there. By the time it gets to here, I want it to have moved in. Now, I also think I want that to get bigger. So on that layer, I'm going to hit scale. Ask for scale. Create a keyframe. And I'm going to say, all right, I'm going to move this back. That keyframe to 1 or 0. And I'm going to say, all right, that point be there. At this point, what size do I want it? I want it to be bigger. Let's see if that worked. Now it's going to take a minute to keyframe. So now it's moving forward. And that might mess with some of the blurring functions, but at least it looks like it's moving through space there. All right. So I can literally keyframe everything. There's some cool effects too if you went and actually keyframed like your water tower. Position. Say like at that point be there. At this point, I want it maybe to move slightly out of the way, you know, or move slightly in. Same thing with the building position. Let's see here, look like that. Here, I'm going to move the building slightly to the right. Hopefully just, I don't want to expose any black area there. And then maybe I also mess with scale on those. So I'll shift select, building water tower, hit S for scale, turn that on, and I'll say, okay, at the end, it's probably getting closer, so I'll have them both be a little bit bigger. And then at the beginning, I'll have them have been a little bit smaller. Okay, so that's a lot going on for this thing, so hopefully this thing doesn't crash. I'm going to hit save or hit play, let that thing render out. And there's Godzilla coming out from behind the building. Looking pretty cool. All right, so this is kind of, you know, done, and really what I want you to do is go ahead and create your own montage. You know, you could do like any kind of scene you could think of. An outer space scene, a sea scene, underwater, another city, you know, a specific place. So go ahead and mess around with these tools and see what you can do.